Please, please work, please. I beg of you. Uh, well, what's in my watch later? Who the fuck looked that so quickly? Oh, Wayward. Thanks, Wayward. Oh, whoops. Oh, eight followers. Come on, I only need 8 followers. That'd be fucking awesome. Get to my next goal. Let's copy to my channel. Ooh, someone's here. I hope everyone can hear me. I'll put the subtitles on just to be safe. I'll wait for people to arrive. Uh, oh, I've got that not on tape. Damn. No, back up. Take off what's rotate. Go away. I have no idea what that is, Emma. Let's see. Nah, 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 nah. Go away, go away, go away, go away, go away. Okay, this is done. The hell? Huh. Ah. Away, away, ah. Okay. Away, 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 away. Away, away. Yep, I know. Already used it. Oh, hello, hello. Hello, my YouTuberinos. How are you doing? If you're looking, watch out for the tardigrades. If anyone can get that reference, gold star. Can't really tell. It looks more purple in real life, honestly. Ah, okay, let's go. Oh God, I've heard four, I repeat, four different ways of pronouncing this poor artist's name. I thought it was Bob Dylan, the the brilliant artist. Now people are flocking to listen to his music. This amplification of his performance at Glastonbury just the British state doesn't know what the fuck it's doing. Just to just to give aid and comfort to to a genocide. Yeah. You can edit a live performance. I would assume the BBC knew that. Hmm. So yeah, it went and basically handed their arse to them, essentially. It's quite fun to see. Just what? And literally all the cabinet members, Lisa and Andy, DCMS, the Department of Culture, Media and Sports. So her brief is kind of big. It's a lower down department, but the areas that she covered are fairly vast. Wedge Streeting yesterday now, because it's Monday, on Laura Kuenssberg, and others have came and said their bit as well. Just the right-wing media here in the UK is just blown up into mass hysteria and pearl clutching, like Damo says. I expected that from the press here. They are utter crap, and mostly right-leaning, some of them nearly verging on the bad word that begins with N from the 30s. Mm. So our print media, I was expecting them to blow up over this, just like because. But the way the government's handled this just shows how incompetent they are, really. Used to be. Give me a minute. Oh, God, I'm going to have to. Right, let's go to my mixer first before going into my settings. The job. Correct, John. Yeah. Rejoice, comrades. John the Brazen and Reza are here. Hi. Hello, hello. For you to hear it, it needs to be audio output, doesn't it? Or is it audio input? Now, the input would be me with these. So it would be audio output. Okay. That's the audio output. Uh, that's right. Can you hear demo now? Oh, thank you, Reza. It's not coming through as what I can see because it really is. It looks really purple to me. If you want to check out the box, if you go onto like either Boots or Superdrug's website or even a supermarket's website, it's Schwarzkopf Urban Metallics. It's called Chrome Amethyst, and you can get a better look with the, the lovely model on the box. You can take a bit better look on your own devices if you wish. But yeah, Super Hubby's reaction was a sight to behold. Holy fuck. It really is quite purple. I cut my hair a bit. I tidied up the ends. So it would actually look a lot more purple. Can we hear demo now? What's the heat like where you are, guys? Oh, hi, Amy. Hi, Amy. Thank you for coming to say hi at least. Hi. Hello. Things are happening. Rejoice, comrades. Sozzled Snake is here. And thank you for that. Lucky you, John. You get to use my emotes. Yay. I do personally like the frying pan bonk. Mm, obviously, wouldn't do its demo, but there's some people who, yeah, they will rename, remain nameless. But let's just say they sit on the cabinet benches. I hope you get relief, Nessa. I really do. We've not been too bad. It got up to 21 here. To any Londoners that might hear me or in the Greater London area, it's getting up to 34 with you guys. Please be careful, stay hydrated, and use sunscreen. I hope you get your relief because, yes, some UK people really aren't built for this kind of weather. We're not. Just me, case in point, really. I burn like a bitch. I can't risk it. I have to reapply factor 50 at least every 15 minutes. Like, unless I'm inside, then probably every hour. But yeah. I go through Factor 50 quite quickly. I've already went through 2 bottles. Where's that? Is it in here? I can't see what I've done with it. Oh, it's through in the living room. So it's the standard size bottle, about that size, and I've went through 2 already. Oh, don't worry, John. I'll go and actually check my settings now because it seems everything's set up for my stream, which is odd, but it's still not coming through. Give me a minute, please. Settings, sound, no, output, speakers. There we go. Hang on a moment. No, I'll take that off. Input, headset. Okay. Hopefully that'll work.
His soldiers expressed dismay at the recklessness of his orders. Yet rather than being held to account, Vash remains a senior officer in the IDF. He is not an aberration, therefore. He's a perfect example of what the IDF is and what the state of Israel deems acceptable for the IDF to do. Understanding Vash's actions, as well as how the words of Bob Vyland can be justified, very much worth delving into some history here, notably the very origins of the IDF itself. The IDF was not born in a vacuum, but it did appear almost instantaneously. A national army created virtually overnight to defend a state that had literally just been created. Israel came into being on the 14th of May 1948. The IDF sprang up on the 26th. How? How did they manage that? Well, it was a direct successor to a range of...
Oh no. No, go back. Okay, maybe if I turn them down a bit, might work a bit better. Okay.
Violent Zionist paramilitary groups operated under British-mandated Palestine, as Palestine was before it suddenly started to be called Israel instead. And there are 3 key groups here: the Haganah, the Ir...
Oh no. Those speakers sound really hot. Maybe it's just me that's not hearing it. If you can hear it, please let me know. I've turned the volume down a bit. I don't need to hear it. I've got subtitles on for myself. And I can always pause it anyway. As long as you can hear me when I've paused, please don't hear the video. Oh! Have they overheated? Maybe I need to put that up.
Gun and the Leahy, or the Stern Gang as they became nicknamed. These organisations were not just militias, they were terror groups, literal terror groups by today's definitions, responsible for massacres, bombings and assassinations. The Haganah was formed in 1920, initially styled itself as a defensive militia tasked with protecting Jewish communities in Mandatory Palestine. However, by the 1930s and 1940s, it had grown into a large, well-organised military force with tens of thousands of fighters. It carried out numerous offensives against Palestinian villages and Arab resistance groups, especially during the Great Arab Revolt of 1936 to 30.
Is Damo sounding better now? Hmm. I'll turn it down on my mixer. Let's see. Put it down to 50.
During which it worked closely with British forces. In 1947 to 48, the run-up to the creation of Israel, the Haganah was central to Plan Dalet, a military campaign aimed at securing territory for the Jewish state through expulsion and intimidation of the Arab population. You might think that rings a bell. If you think that sort of thing started with the Nakba, as if that was a singular event, think again. It led to the depopulation of hundreds of Palestinian villages and the mass displacement that was very much part of what we now refer to as the Nakba. It all happened before the State of Israel functionally came into existence too. The Haganah also included an elite strike force, the Palmach, which pioneered tactics that remain in IDF doctrine today, including night raids and demolitions and psychological warfare. Politically, they were very much closely aligned with the Labour Zionist movement, Mapai, at that time, which happened to be led by a chap by the name of David Ben-Gurion, who, of course, ended up becoming Israel's first prime minister, didn't he? In fact, a number of prime ministers of Israel have links to these three groups, funnily enough. This group became the core of the IDF, though. It was the largest of the three paramilitaries, and if you think they sound rotten enough in and of themselves, this group was far and away the most lenient. The next group is Irgun, or Etzel, who split from the Haganah in 1931 due to...
So we can get it properly. There we go.
Right, so when the BBC tried to dodge controversy at Glastonbury by censoring one band and choosing to air another, they might as well have handed that said band, Bob Vylan, the mic and said, go ahead, make it worse for us. So they did, brilliantly, with a simple explosive chant of saying death to the IDF, Britain's most sanitised institution, accidentally live-streamed a statement too loud to ignore. What has followed has been an Olympic-level display of political pearl-clutching, post-gaslighting, and the British state bending over backwards to protect an army halfway across the world, not from missiles, but from music. But beneath the headlines, the outrage, and the police probes that are now underway lies a bigger question. Why is calling for the end of a genocidal army, you will note, not Jews, not Israelis, not people at all, but an institution, more scandalous than the genocide itself? And actually, Bob Vylan's words have raised a very valid point, because we know the IDF is anything but the world's most moral army. But actually, it has always been like that. And instead of shielding them from fault, as those decrying Bob Vylan are attempting to do, we should talk about this far more. There's a very good reason for doing so. really relevant to what we're seeing them doing in the here and now, as I'm going to explain. Right, so first and foremost, caveat time, because there will always be people who twist words, and this entire story is about truth twisting after all. So let's just make it absolutely crystal clear at the start. I absolutely am not supporting a call for the death of people, any people, at all, but then neither has the band in question here done that either, despite many claims that are being made to the contrary. When the dust settles on Glastonbury 2025, the biggest explosion won't be remembered for the music, but rather the political firestorm concerning two acts, Kneecap and Bob Vylan. In the midst of Israel's genocidal campaign, still ongoing against Gaza, as we all know, or should know by now, the BBC's curation of coverage from Britain's biggest music festival has been exposed as a tangle of cowardice, censorship, and contradiction. The broadcaster's clumsy attempt to avoid controversy by refusing to air Kneecap's pro-Palestinian set, only to platform Bob Vylan's defiant cry of death to the IDF live on air, has now sparked condemnation, a police investigation, Zionist hysteria, and most tellingly, a national conversation that the establishment desperately wanted to avoid. To say that the BBC's Glastonbury broadcast blew up in its face would be a polite understatement. But what has followed, the weaponisation of Bob Vylan's words, the grotesque distortion of their meaning, and the abuse of state power to placate pro-Israel interests, demands far deeper scrutiny. So let's have a little bit of that then, shall we? Kneecap were clearly targeted not because of any genuine threat, but because of the court case one of their members is involved in, Mo Farah, holding up a Hezbollah flag allegedly thrown on stage during a performance, which he'd held up not realising what it was. That's his claim. Hezbollah being a prescribed organisation.
They've dropped that part of it because someone in the audience, someone in the crowd, chucked the flag onto the stage. He didn't bring it on himself, so that bit's been dropped. But yeah, the other part's still gone ahead. They really shouldn't be. Leave Kneecap alone and leave Mo Farah alone. Thank you very much.
In the UK, it's illegal to show support for them, as that means. But on top of that, the group's pro-Palestinian support and therefore the symbolism and solidarity their performance conveyed was also not something the BBC wished to show. So the BBC's decision to cut away from their West Holt stage set was not motivated by public safety, but public relations, specifically a desire to...
Oh, God. Was it? I thought it was because of the Hezbollah flag that got chucked on the stage. All right, that one's been dropped. Thank you, Brodie. Rejoice, comrade. Brodie is here. Hi, Brodie. Mwah. Great to see you. Thank you for educating me tonight. That's good. So they dropped that. Yeah.
39, during which it worked closely with British forces. In 1947 to 48, the run-up to the creation of Israel, the Haganah was central to...
I will remind everyone again, British mandate of Palestine and Transjordan. We can thank the Sykes-Picot Agreement for that one at the end of World War I. Then that bastard Balfour Declaration. Damn, I've got it paused there. Give me a second. I'm going to have to go and get water. Yeah. Oh, why is it dipping? Oh, God. Ugh. Shall we get back to it?
Plan Dalet, a military campaign aimed at securing territory for the Jewish state through expulsion and intimidation of the Arab population. You might think that rings a bell. If you think that sort of thing started with the Nakba, as if that was a singular event, think again. It led to the depopulation of hundreds of Palestinian villages and the mass displacement that was very much part of what we now refer to as the Nakba. It all happened before the State of Israel functionally came into existence too. The Haganah also included an elite strike force, the Palmach, which pioneered tactics that remain in IDF doctrine today, including night raids and demolitions and psychological warfare. Politically, they were very much closely aligned with the Labour Zionist movement, MAPI, at that time, which happened to be led by a chap by the name of David Ben-Gurion, who, of course, ended up becoming Israel's first Prime Minister, didn't he?
Israel's first Prime Minister.
In fact, a number of Prime Ministers of Israel have links to these three groups, funnily enough. This group became the core of the IDF, though. It was the largest of the three paramilitaries, and if you think they sound rotten enough in and of themselves, this group was far and away the most lenient. The next group is Irgun, or Etzel, who split from the Haganah in 1931 due to ideological differences. You see, whereas the Haganah maintained, at least publicly, a defensive posture, the Irgun championed direct aggressive assaults. Guided by revisionist Zionism, the belief that Jewish identity should be promoted through expansionism and the need for a Jewish majority, again, sound familiar, the Irgun adopted terrorism as a political strategy. Its most infamous act was the 1946 bombing of the King David Hotel, which of course we've all heard of, haven't we? Targeting the British administrative headquarters in Jerusalem and killing 91 people, including civilians. The Irgun hated Britain, but it also carried out attacks on Palestine.
Paused. Can you hear me?
Palestinian civilians as well, including in the Deir Yassin massacre in 1948, where over 100 villagers, including women and children, were murdered. The Irgun's legacy lives on in the IDF's ethos of overwhelming force and its readiness to target civilian infrastructure and populations under the guise of military necessity. We see the parallels between then and now. The Irgun's commander was a chap called Menachem Begin, incidentally, who of course later became Prime Minister of Israel, normalising the integration of such violent ideologies into Israeli governance, it could be argued. The Irgun were forcibly integrated into the IDF in 1948 during what was called the Altalena affair, which saw the now Prime Minister Ben-Gurion send his fledgling IDF, as it then was, up against the Irgun, notably the shelling of the Irgun arms ship Altalena, hence the name, after which they were assimilated into the IDF as well. The third group, the Lehi, or the Stern Gang, was the smallest of these three paramilitaries, but the very worst of them. Founded in 1940 by Avraham Stern, hence why they're called the Stern Gang, Lehi openly promoted fascism and viewed the British as the primary enemy, even during World War II. They actively sought alliances with the Axis powers, including Nazi Germany, in exchange for promises to support Jewish statehood. Lehi conducted assassinations, bombings and kidnappings, targeting British officials, Arab civilians, and even moderate Jews who opposed their methods. Stern actually wrote to Hitler at one point expressing his admiration. In 1944, they assassinated Lord Moyne, the...
What the fuck? Okay, these people are monsters. Fucking monsters.
Then British Minister of State for the Middle East in Cairo. In 1948, they assassinated Count Folke Bernadotte, the UN mediator trying to broker a ceasefire, for proposing the right of return for Palestinian refugees. Leahy's fusion of ideological extremism, racial supremacism, and political violence echoes in the IDF's treatment of Palestinians today, especially in targeted killings, extrajudicial executions, and the systemic dehumanization of Gaza's population. And so much of this can arguably be said to have gone beyond just the IDF. So much of this ethos and thinking permeates Israeli society as well. Stern
was shot dead in 1942, but
Bloody hell. That is terrifying. Why are we supporting these people?
Leahy persisted for several more years, another member of whom, as you might not be surprised to hear by this point, also became a Prime Minister of Israel later, Yitzhak Shamir. But Leahy was finally disbanded in 1948 when members of the group were then permitted to join the IDF because, yeah, they're exactly the sort of people that were welcome. When Israel declared independence, all three paramilitaries, in essence, were either absorbed into or merged with the newly formed IDF. The Haganah formed its backbone, the Irgun and Leahy were pressured into disbanding, and their fighters absorbed into formal military units. But their influence did not disappear. It became institutionalized. These three groups were the IDF. Therefore, their doctrines of asymmetrical warfare, ethnic cleansing disguised as security operations, and psychological terror campaigns all made their way into IDF strategy. From village clearances during the Nakba to the sniper corridors of Gaza in 2024, the IDF has never shaken those paramilitary roots of theirs. You can trace the activities of the IDF in this day and age now to that of the Haganah, the Irgun, and the Leahy, through the IDF to this day and what they do. Brigadier General Yehuda Vash is a modern manifestation of these roots, therefore. His tactics in Gaza mirror the village raids of the 1940s. His orders to kill civilians echo the brutality of Leahy and Irgun. His contempt for legal norms and international oversight reflects a foundational ethos that the supremacy of Zionist goals takes precedent over Palestinian life. The BBC now stands accused of being more loyal to the Israel lobby and the Starmer government than to truth, culture, or its own editorial independence. It censored Kneecap for their shout-out to Palestine action and their court appearances. It broadcast Bob Vyland's protest, then disavowed it. It apologised to Zionists before it ever defended artistic freedom. As Al Jazeera and the Quds News Network have reported, Glastonbury's organisers
Well done to those artists and those bands.
quickly condemned the political content of both acts. Police have launched investigations. Pro-Zionist politicians lined up to attack the artists. Even Bob Vyland's ticketing profile on myticket.co.uk has been deleted. Yet still, Kneecap doubled down, calling out Keir Starmer directly and reminding their audience that protest is not terrorism and that opposing genocide is not anti-Semitism. Aside from the history I've just outlined, you can show the nonsense being peddled over Bob Vyland's chants by exposing the hypocrisy on show too. For example, Wes Streeting or whoever from the Labour benches who's spoken to the media today wailing about calling for death to the IDF is one thing. But how many politicians would make the same amount of outcry if, for example, Bob Vyland had called for the death of the Taliban or the death of ISIS? This is the same thing. It's an institution. It's another organisation guilty of conducting absolute atrocity against innocents, is it not? Nobody would accuse someone of Islamophobia for denouncing those groups, would they? But no, when it comes to the IDF, suddenly this becomes hate speech. The real problem is that Israel has enjoyed 8 decades of impunity. Artists are condemned for opposing genocide, whilst musicians like, I don't know, David Draymond of Disturbed has proudly signed Israeli bombs and face zero criticism for that. Israelis shout death to Arabs at football matches and concerts, and yet nothing is made of that. Yet it's Bob Vyland's critique of a military institution that causes panic and wailing and much pearl clutching. Speaking of such pearl clutching, one example I have to make mention of cropped up on Twitter when the Jewish Chronicle's Jake Wallace-Simons tweeted smugly that Bob Vyland would soil his pants, or words to that effect, if he ever met the IDF. And I draw attention to it because the answer from one wit, Carl Hansen, really captured the depravity of the moment when he replied to Simon saying, "Why? Did the IDF have a reputation for doing unspeakable things to unarmed civilians or something?" Well, indeed, they do they not? And as this clearly shows, more and more people are not only aware of it, but prepared to speak out on it now too, inspired by those using their platforms to do so, to condemn those committing atrocities, and seemingly getting away with it time after time. And that is why death to the IDF resonates, not as a threat, because it isn't one. It's a demand for justice. Tens of thousands saw the performances live. Millions more have seen them since, especially in light of the fallout from it. And in their refusal to be silenced, Kneecap and Bob Vyland have accomplished what few artists can. They've told the truth, unapologetically, in the face of systemic power. And if the law is now weaponized against them over it, that'll get called out too. It is not anti-Semitic to oppose genocide. It is not terrorism to shout Free Palestine. It is not incitement to call for the dismantling of an army that is not in any way moral, but is in fact built on ethnic cleansing and terrorism. The real danger is silence. The real threat is the continued existence of a military machine whose founders, in part at least, idolised fascists, whose methods have not necessarily changed, and whose enablers still dictate the boundaries of acceptable speech in Britain. Bob Vyland said what needed to be said, and if that makes people uncomfortable, then good, because it should. A further example of the IDF exemplifying the lessons of its own history is seemingly on Daily Show at so-called aid hubs in Gaza, where trying to get food could see the IDF end your life instead, as we've now seen going on for over a month. But now it seems you might also get drugged. Get all the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the very same time, which is very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people. I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.
The Prime Minister of your country, not mine, saying he didn't want us to play. So Keir Starmer.
Glastonbury 2025 has gotten underway, and this year's festival comes with more than a few political undertones. You're probably already aware that Irish rap trio Kneecap found themselves literally in the dock earlier this month, with Mo Chara making a plea hearing at Westminster Magistrates Court as he faces jumped-up terrorism charges.
Later will be on the BBC, if anybody watches the BBC.
Fuck the BBC! Fuck the Bambahood!
We'll get Wembley in September. But most importantly, free, free, Palestine! Free, free, Palestine! Free, free, Palestine! Free, free, Palestine!
He's back in court for trial in a couple of months. Before then, though, the group had an appearance on stage at Worthy Farm to get through, with a huge amount of support for themselves and Palestine in tow, following the government's attack on free speech, art and protest over the illegal occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy faced criticism for her remarks about their scheduled appearance at Glasgow a couple of days ago, and then just this afternoon the BBC announced that they would not be airing Kneecap's set despite much anticipation to see it from the public.
Personally, I don't want to see that on TV screens.
When news of this reached Bob Vyland's camp, he decided to defy the BBC and put this statement into his set earlier today. Let's see what's happening.
Free, free! Free, free! Free, free! Alright, but have you heard this one though? Death, death to the IDF! 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 Hell yeah, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be, will be, inshallah, it will be free.
Bit of a catchy tune that, not bad. So while Starmer and the BBC were focused on Kneecap, they were blindsided by Bob Vyland, and if they thought that only one artist out of everybody playing there this weekend supports Palestine and has a message for the government, then
you're very much mistaken.
Speaking of being sadly mistaken, Rod Stewart will also be performing at Glastonbury for the coveted Legends slot. He's been in a bit of a political mess himself this week, having received a backlash for saying that voters should give right-wing Nigel Farage and Reform a chance at the next election. The comments were grotesque and stupid, according to fans, and stultifyingly ill-informed, according to, me.
Damn right!
So, what do you think about Kneecap and Bob Vyland's performances and Rod the Mod's ill-fated advice? Please do let me know in the comments, and I'd especially like to hear from anybody at Glastonbury this year if you caught the acts I've mentioned in this video. Your feedback, as always, is much appreciated, so please share your thoughts down below.
So fuck Keir Starmer. Yeah! Fuck Keir Starmer!
Thanks so much for watching. Please hit the subscribe and thumbs up buttons to help us out on the algorithm. You can now join the channel with a membership for just 99p with some great perks for you to enjoy, including exclusive content and early viewings, plus lots more. And you get to join the list of awesome people who support the channel that you can see on your screen right now. Hit the join button or follow the links in the channel description. If you'd like to make a one-off contribution, then please hit super thanks on the video or follow the link to our Buy Me a Coffee page where you can help to show solidarity and support the channel for just the price of a tasty hot beverage. All contributions are greatly appreciated. Thanks again everyone. My Left Eye, be seeing you soon.
Right, so when your last war ends with $20 billion in damages, your surgical strikes hit everything but their targets, and your military pride gets pounded into rubble by a barrage of enemy missiles, you'd think the smart move would be to step back, regroup, and maybe, just maybe, reconsider your approach. But the problem isn't necessarily them, but it's you. But for Israel's leadership, failure, rather than being a lesson to learn from, being a deterrent to repeating the same mistakes, efforts must simply be redoubled instead. Still, mere days after being handed their backsides on a plate by Iran's Operation True Promise 3, Israel's leaders aren't reflecting. They're plotting, and not subtly either. According to reports, they've just been caught red-handed scheming to stage a false flag attack on US territory and pin the blame on Iran, all in a desperate bid to drag Washington back into war against Iran on their behalf. Warnings of Israel doing such a thing already having come out some time ago, desperate as Netanyahu is. The plan was foiled, thankfully, thanks to a timely warning from an unnamed third country. But the very fact that such a dangerous deception was allegedly in motion reveals a disturbing truth, that Israel's appetite for war is matched only by its contempt for international norms, and its faith that the United States will cover the tab, clean up the mess, and keep believing the lies. With Trump back on the scene barking threats, depleted uranium being thrown at Iran much as they did to Lebanon last year, and Netanyahu's government pretending the last disaster was just a dress rehearsal and they'll be ready for the real thing next time, one thing does seem very clear. The sequel to Israel's failed war with Iran may already be in production, and this time the stakes are even higher, and Israel have even fewer scruples. Right, so the 12-day war between Israel and Iran left a scar across the Middle East that should have prompted some sober reflection, some diplomacy and some de-escalation, especially on Israel's part. Instead, Israel appears determined to reignite those hostilities, emboldened not by success, they didn't have any. They failed on every single one of their stated goals of ending Iran's nuclear program and initiating regime change, but by desperation instead. Despite sustaining enormous losses, military, economic, and reputational, Tel Aviv is once again potentially laying the groundwork for renewed confrontation with Tehran. And this has been ramped up all the more by recent reports suggesting this effort has included a foiled false flag operation meant to strike US territory and blame it on Iran. A ploy that, had it succeeded, could have triggered catastrophic conflict and the US becoming far more vociferous in their involvement. This news has come out courtesy of Squawk Box and Tehran Times.
Israel planned a false flag attack on US soil to force US into full legal action. I think that might be terrorism. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure they have the capacity to do shit like this. But holy fuck. We really should not be supporting this. That's why there's mass protests. Damn it, where is it? Bloody terrifying.
Fair play, Iranian source, and revealed that Israeli operatives had planned a false flag attack on the US with the intent of blaming Iran. The operation, reportedly thwarted by an unnamed third country that shared intelligence with the United States and Iran, was a calculated
unknown third country. Could be any of them in the area, I guess. God almighty.
attempt to provoke American military intervention against Iran during a fragile ceasefire. According to the report, the scheme bore all the hallmarks of Israeli clandestine operations: precision, deniability, and manipulation of foreign policy through deceit, but without any actual details as to what the operation was, nor who issued the warning. There is caveats to be had with this. This is not without precedent, it has to be said. Historical instances such as the 1954 Lavon affair, in which Israeli agents attempted to bomb British and American civilian targets in Egypt in order to sour relations between Cairo and the West. There have also been persisting allegations that the shooting of the 2 Israeli embassy staff in Washington just last month was also a false flag. Again, still to be proven in that case. These illustrate a disturbing pattern in Israeli history: Israel's willingness to engineer pretexts for war for their own ends that actually undermines all of its claims of self-defense and reveals a deeper, much more cynical agenda, that the perpetuation of their regional dominance through manufactured conflict is more important to them than peace. Especially right now when Netanyahu has failed to push back his corruption trial again. The timing of this, let's bear that in mind. So he needs another war. It's kept working for him up until now, hasn't it? But the US government is now fully aware of this latest deception should, in theory, constrain its future actions. Any American political figure, particularly Donald Trump, who echoes anti-Iran rhetoric now, when he absolutely is, of course, does so in full knowledge that a key ally has attempted to manipulate them into war. Of course, with so many other news outlets seemingly ignoring this story completely, though, no investigation happening by so-called journalists may mean there isn't much in it on one hand, but
Yes, so-called journalists. So don't get me wrong, there is journalists and outlets who are reporting this stuff accurately wherever they can. But the fucking hell. Ugh.
cynic might figure it's being played down heavily due to the further damage such revelations might do to public perception of Israel, already decimated as that has been. The backdrop to this false flag plot, allegation, of course, has been the dramatic exchange of hostilities between Israel and Iran. Israel's preemptive strike, Operation Rising Lion, was framed as a decisive blow against Iran's nuclear infrastructure. In reality, it proved ineffectual and precipitated a far more devastating response. Iran's Operation True Promise 3 targeted over 30 Israeli military and industrial sites, including drone manufacturing facilities, intelligence outposts, and even a pilot's training center. The scale of damage inflicted by Iran was unprecedented. Initial Israeli estimates put the economic cost of the war, just those 12 days of it, at approximately $20 billion. A figure that includes both physical infrastructure damage and the vast expenditure on defensive measures such as missile interceptors. The Israeli government was subsequently forced to request additional US financial assistance, a humiliating admission of how ill-prepared it was for the scale of the Iranian retaliation, drastically underestimated as they had. Iran's strategic use of hypersonic and low-altitude missiles, including the Fatah-1, came as a massive shock to Israel and the US, especially in how it overwhelmed Israeli and US air defense systems. Notably, the US expended over $800 million, nearly $1 billion worth of THAAD interceptor missiles, roughly 20% of the global stockpile of those munitions as that was, just to defend Israel over the 12 days of that conflict.
Oh, I read that it was 20% of America's own stockpile, not 20% of global stockpile. I can't remember who else was sold that to. Might need to go and check who buys that system from the Americans. Fuck. That's a lot of THAAD missiles. I can't remember what THAAD stands for. Anyone here? To my YouTube commenters, I will be back. I'm using this phone to go and check something. Give me a minute. Okay. Oh, God. Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Anti-Ballistic Missile System. Okay. Oh, it's Lockheed Martin that designed it. Right. Operators. United Arab Emirates, the States, of course. And Saudis. So two countries that are in the region. US has 7 batteries of THAAD, which will expand to 8 in the future. Okay. Secondary business. Okay, fair enough. So currently there's only 2 other operators other than the Americans. Okay. Thank you, Wikipedia. Okay. Back to demo.
Yet despite this investment, Iran's projectiles struck their targets repeatedly, demonstrating that advanced Western missile defenses were no match for Iran's evolving military technology. Rather than acknowledge its strategic missteps, though, the Israeli government has adopted a posture of renewed aggression. The increasingly insane Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has publicly threatened to resume attacks on Iranian missile sites and nuclear facilities, claiming that Operation Rising Lion was merely a preview. Such rhetoric is not only irresponsible, especially given the scale of damage we have now seen confirmed done to Israel, but disingenuous and hypocritical with it. If, as Katz claims, as Trump has also claimed, that Iran's nuclear program was destroyed, why the need for renewed strikes on these sites? You've destroyed all of their nuclear facilities and their program and their enriched uranium, according to you. You've obliterated it all. So why the need, unless you're lying? European intelligence reports seem to bear that out too, contradicting those Israeli and American claims of success. According to the Cradle, Iran's enriched uranium stockpiles survived the attacks and remain intact. Furthermore, in response to the violations of its sovereignty, Iran passed legislation ending cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, effectively severing one of the few remaining links to nuclear diplomacy, blaming IAEA chief Rafael Grossi, as Iran does, of destroying any trust or good faith they have in the agency, following those allegations of leaks made by the IAEA to Israel concerning Iran's nuclear program. But the hypocrisy here ought to be glaring by now when it comes to Israeli and Iranian nuclear assets. Israel is not a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, and it maintains a clandestine nuclear arsenal that they deny.
I love what Kev does when anyone talks about this. He puts it right on top of the screen so you can't miss it. Israel has nuclear weapons. I keep on meaning to ask him how he does that. Might ask Shanna, she might know. Because that's quite fun. And he's got another one when they pronounce nuclear incorrectly. I know how to say it because my dad was in that area. That was his expertise. My biological dad.
But is one of the worst kept global secrets going. Yet it demands transparency and compliance from Iran, who still are a signatory state operating within the framework of the NPT. So the double standard is both legally and morally indefensible, and yet still world leaders do it, and increasingly by the boos and jeers of people worldwide refusing to accept such drivel any longer. Iranian officials have also, quite rightly, framed Israel's actions as violations of international law. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian described the 12-day conflict as a clear act of aggression under Article 39 of the United Nations Charter, and a blatant breach of Article 2.4, which prohibits the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity of another state. He further warned that had Iran not responded proportionally, the conflict could have escalated into a widespread and uncontrollable war. Certainly they had a right to defend themselves, so there were fears with the conflict ongoing that it would still spread that way too. Ultimately, until Israel is reined in, that fear hasn't actually gone away still, I would argue. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also criticised the ongoing ceasefire, stating that Iran would not accept any halt to operations, that, as is the case with Lebanon, implied an uneven agreement, and certainly with Lebanon abiding by a ceasefire that Israel have abused hundreds of times over now for months on end, his comments have been interpreted as something of a rebuke to Lebanese President Joseph Aoun for letting that situation in his country persist, worsening as it is in the last few days. Meanwhile, Iran has intensified its internal counterintelligence operations, targeting Israeli espionage networks, and an interesting bit of info has come out bearing out their justification for doing so too. An audio recording has come to light that has been authenticated by the Washington Post that captured Mossad operatives threatening Iranian officials and their families with death unless they complied with demands to sabotage Iranian institutions. Western media has again largely downplayed this incident too, though, instead framing Iran's arrests and crackdowns of suspected Mossad spy rings in their territory as authoritarian repression, which is just surreal, but again all serves a narrative that shields Israeli misconduct from scrutiny. Further complicating the humanitarian landscape are reports, much more widely reported this time, it has to be said, that Israel has used depleted uranium munitions during its strikes on Iran. Depleted uranium is a byproduct of the nuclear enrichment process, so there's a bitter irony with Israel deciding to use this. I wonder where they got depleted uranium from themselves. They can't possibly be enriching it themselves for their own nuclear weapons, can they? No, I'm sure that can't possibly be the case. But it's known for its armor-piercing capabilities, this stuff, and it's been used in such applications. However, it is also known for its long-term...
Excuse me. I will repeat. Israel has nuclear weapons. We've known this for a while because of some brave journalists and other people who leaked the information. Actual scientists who worked on it, I believe. I will need to go and do some research. Super Hub might be able to point me in the right direction. I will ask him in the morning. Again, I really need to borrow that. How Kev done that. Quite fun.
Health risks. International health organizations have linked the use of depleted uranium and the exposure to it to increased rates of leukemia, kidney failure, and congenital abnormalities, particularly amongst children. This is also not the first time Israel has used depleted uranium. Similar weapons were deployed in Lebanon in October of last year. The United States has also been widely criticized for its use of depleted uranium during the 1991 and 2003 invasions of Iraq, which has led to cancer epidemics in several Iraqi cities. Amid all of these developments, the tangerine tyrant that is Donald Trump has re-entered the debate with his characteristic belligerence combined.
Tangerine tyrant. Love it. Love it.
With his unerring stupidity. Following Ayatollah Khomeini's declaration that Iran had won the conflict with Israel, Trump publicly mocked the Iranian leader and threatened renewed strikes just for that basis. His country was decimated, Trump claimed, adding that he had deliberately spared Khomeini's life despite knowing exactly where he was sheltered, he says, saying that the Ayatollah should actually thank him for this too. Trump has also halted what remained of sanctions relief for Iran and implied that any resumption of enrichment activities, still Iran's legal right under the NPT, we have to acknowledge, would trigger another US military response. So who needs Israel to plant a false flag if that's his attitude? Such threats not only undermine diplomatic efforts, but further validate Iran's decision to suspend cooperation with the IAEA, who would report it, even if trust between them and Iran hadn't been so badly damaged as it has. Israel's efforts to restart war with Iran through false flag operations, or alleged operations, the foul use of depleted uranium, and ongoing military threats represents a profound danger not only to the Middle East, but to international law and global stability as well. That the United States is aware of Israel's deception and continues to support Tel Aviv regardless is a damning indictment of its foreign policy priorities and Donald Trump's rhetoric. Meanwhile, he's just adding more fuel to a fire that has already burned too many, threatening war again himself. Iran's response, which has been militarily effective, diplomatically assertive, and legally grounded, has so far averted a wider catastrophe. But for how much longer, given Netanyahu needs another distraction fast now, and Trump appears to be sending out the same messaging? The alleged foiled false flag plot needs to still serve as a warning at the very least, though. But should the world continue to ignore Israel's provocations, the next war they instigate could be far worse, and on far weaker pretext. Further warfare might be being mooted again between Israel.
America won't rein them in. It's up to the global community, so actual head of state, to do this now. We cannot trust what I am calling the chaos administration. We can't do it. Can't trust them. There is a grouping called the Five Eyes. It's basically the intelligence agencies of the five Anglophone countries. Well, it's been open. You know this now. They might do a false flag to make it look like Iran's attacked US bases, essentially, installations, things that they've got scattered about the Middle East or West Asia. Pick whatever one, because both get used by lots of different people. So they might try a false flag. They might try to assassinate the Ayatollah. Holy fuck. So take out military bases. There's one in Saudi. I think there's one in I think there's a couple in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, you've got other countries around there where there's other American military bases. The ones closest to Gaza, obviously, is Akrotiri, which is on Cyprus, which is a British military base. We've been there since the fighting, basically, Turkey saying Cyprus is part of their country. So they might not do the false flag on an American bases in the area, but they might come after Akrotiri because they can definitely reach it. It's a short crossover. And if they do that, the response from the British people is going to be loud and very angry. Taking out British forces there, I can't actually remember, but there's one in Akrotiri. They're there for peacekeeping reasons, essentially. There's a demilitarised zone that goes across. So North Cyprus basically recognises themselves as Turkish. The south of the island, below this little strip across the island, identifies Cypriots, so basically citizens of Cyprus. So they might, if they try to do anything to Akrotiri as a false flag, to make it look like Iran done it, did Iran reach Akrotiri? I think if they calculated that Iran could actually reach Akrotiri, obviously Iran wouldn't fucking do that. We know they wouldn't. That would be suicidal. Even though our forces are a lot lower than what a lot of people would want, essentially. They would they know what kind of response the British government would have to do. So be on the lookout for any sort of shady shit happening. If you can, you don't need to read the newspapers, watch people on YouTube, blah blah blah, check things out, stuff like that. So keep your eyes peeled. So ongoing situation is an understatement at the minute.
Israel and Iran, but Israel have already struck again in another way, just not quite in the way you might have expected. They've launched another attack on Iran, but this time there's been a little bit of a twist to it. So check out this video recommendation here to find out more about that as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word.
What's on Anfiel's one? Oh, too long. Oh, right, that's the end of the stuff that I put on for my okay. Go to my subscriptions if you please. Oh, Turn Left is great, people. Go and check out Turn
The
Left.
co-op has banned the sale of Israeli products. The co-op is to stop sourcing goods from Israel, Iran, and 15 other countries where it says there are international recognized rights abuses and violations of international law. The Mutual, which operates about 2,300 grocery stores in the UK, has drawn up a list of about 100 products affected by the change, including Israeli carrots and mangoes from Mali. Other countries covered by the ban, which will be gradually implemented from this month, include Russia, Syria, Belarus, Afghanistan, Myanmar, and Sudan. The co-op said the ban would cover ingredients for its own label products as well as whole items. The reason why the banning of Israeli products is the focus point here is because this is going against the grain of Western foreign policy. So I think that's quite significant. I think they've taken a brave stance. Now, the co-op likes to pride itself on doing business ethically. The one major factor in this is that it's a co-op. Obviously, the clue is in the name. Now,
I cannot remember where my nearest co-op is. There used to be one. No, there's one on Union Street. I think my nearest co-op's in the East End. There's not one in Bishopbrooks. Is there one in Kirkenstilloch? I can't remember if there's one in Kirkenstilloch. Yeah, I'm desperate. At least this is great. This is a good move. I approve. Well done, co-op. It has, unfortunately. It's not really a full co-op anymore. That needs to change back. My auntie used to work in the local co-op up in Perth, where I grew up. I loved that co-op. I used to go and do my granny shopping in it. She liked the products from co-op, and I liked helping her out. And I also used to take my dog for a walk when I'd done that. I tied her up outside. There was a lamp post, and I tied her up. And she could see me as I was going along the front aisles, and when I was going up, she could see me, so she wouldn't panic too much. The Co-op has a fond place in my heart. And like I say, I can't remember where my nearest one is. There used to be one on Union Street in the city centre, but that's gone now. That's a Tesco. Tesco bought that site over. I really do think the nearest one for me is an Easter House, which is a bit of a trek. It'd be 2 different buses for me. Yeah. Well, a lot of the co-ops, especially here in Glasgow, are based either near university, like my one's Strathclyde. Can't remember if there was one in the West End or Glasgow Uni. And there was always one nearby a college. Oh my God, there's a co-op in Parkhead. I remembered from the nearest co-op is. There's one in the Parkhead, but its footfall's went down because there's a big fuck up Asda. These big ones, I'm not a big fan of Asda. We go up the road. Yeah, that's right, up that way to Morrison's. They own most of their own farms, so all the veg you can grow in Scotland essentially, or across the UK, and all of their livestock farms, they own all of those, or most of them. So all the meat you get is quality checked and it's better meat essentially. It's good. I like Morrison's. Plus it's a nearest supermarket. We've also got Tesco Rolex, which is down behind me in that way. But it's too expensive now. And the place is fucking massive. Feel free to check it out. Tesco St. Rolex. I'll type the name in the chat. Tesco St. Rolex. Feel free to check it out. So that is the nearest big massive one for us, but we don't go to it anymore. We go up to Morrison's, and they've just expanded as well. It is a lot bigger, and it still is good, and can be as cheap as supermarkets are really.